There have been many occasions that I have had feelings within me, and I'm sure many of you have similar experiences, where we see young men and women, or I should say boys and girls, mostly boys, selling magazines and books at red lights. And you look into their eyes and you see great intelligence, brightness, but they don't have a chance to be educated. When they don't have a chance to be educated, they are unemployable because they have no skills. And this is the wealth that we have as a country, and it cannot be marshaled to the extent that it can. We have the strength of a large population, a young population, an entrepreneurial population. But the one thing that we don't have is the chance of and the ability to be educated. Many of these young kids would love to have the chance of having an education, to be able to speak English, to be able to have their place in the sun.
Mr. Tata, just talking on education, Nobel laureate Kailash Satyarthi has often said, and he keeps saying this, that we often say that children work or there's child labor because this will end poverty, but it actually leads to poverty because you're keeping children from being educated and you're actually then stopping a future resource of India. You're not investing in human resource development, you're just wasting it. When you see education as a way to fight poverty, or education as a way to look at India's other problems, whether it's malnutrition, whether it's lack of skill development, whether it's big companies saying we can't employ current graduates from school, how do you see education as a solution?
I think apart from the inherent intelligence that I think is embedded in so many of our citizens, there's a great sense of entrepreneurship that exists in the country. And that entrepreneurship you're permitting to spread with education. It doesn't need to be master's degrees or doctorates. It's enough education to enable these people to coexist with those who are educated. I don't, you know, there's an antiquated view that people had in India that don't educate them because they will seek too much or they will know too much. That's a terribly negative view to take about your population. With education comes opportunity, with education comes knowledge, with education comes the heightened curiosity, and it turns you away from a life of crime, of dissidence, and I think education is a prime ingredient to a successful life. In a few cases, education goes another way. That's not what we're trying to do.
It's interesting you said that on entrepreneurship, because of course we all know you're a very discerning angel investor in some sense in startups. So this is an angel investment of a completely different kind in a way, because it's a huge social investment. But tell me then, when you made that point, why is it that when we look at governments after government or a budget after budget, and of course we have a budget coming up soon, why is it that education, health are all sectors which never seem to take mainstream political priority or mainstream priority of governments? Education budgets, health budgets can be cut, but defense budgets can go up.
Well, I think you're talking about what a government may have to do, the priorities the government may have. But if you were to take a poll in the country and ask people what they would like to see the government do, I once sent a Twitter message out asking people what they would like to see the government do. And I thought it would be jobs, housing. There was just a massive responses that all said education. There wasn't another topic that came up. That opened my eyes that that there is a tremendous feel for the need for education and access to education.
So are you as excited about this as any young startup, or do you think this is the time to be started? This is a startup. It has the same energy and enthusiasm, do you think?
Yes, I am. I'm exceedingly excited. I was excited when MIT agreed to participate, and they have been a partner the likes of which I have not easily seen. But I think what we're doing today is transformational, and I can only say that I'm amazed and delighted to know that the government has been as supportive as they have been to us, and we will make a difference.
Mr. Ratan Tata, final thoughts, then we'll open final thoughts this afternoon. When you said, because you made that point about learning of English, now it's interesting you went into education because of course education is a state subject, so you have so many more state governments to deal with, and there has been much debate about whether the language, which language should children be taught in, the need for English at all, how to make India global. Do we make the same? How do we learn from the China experiment where, of course, the scale is much, the quality of education is much more, but the learning was in Chinese? And do you find it interesting that so many students, and we've seen this in surveys, have opted out of the government school system and often paid, and we've found that parents would prefer to pay and go to a private school and learn English rather than be in a government school and learn in the language of the state. How would you handle issues like these, which will change from state to state?
Well, I think we're recognizing that English is going to be a language that will help the careers of the young Indians, that it's going to enable career opportunities in the service sector in many areas where knowledge of English makes one more employable, more easily employable. But may I move away from that? It's just a thought that comes to my mind from the question you asked. When I went to school in India, getting a telephone was a 7 to 10 year waiting period. It was normal. That's what you waited to get a telephone. And with the telephone came a certain degree of acceptability in terms of standing identity, if you might. Then we moved to the digital age where we now have a situation where we have maybe 1 billion handphones and maybe 500 to 600 smartphones. We see people who, the same kids or the same people who have a phone now have identity and come to you and say, send me a WhatsApp, or give me your cell number and I'll give you a call. And what's happened? And now on e-commerce, the same people are able to navigate their way through the digital world of a smartphone and make purchases and do commerce. What has happened? It's that curiosity doesn't tell us that India has transformed itself, and technology has made that possible. The digital world has made that possible, and that we add to that or ride on that to educate our people. We're going to be doing a tremendous thing over the next decade. And I think those of us who will be around at the end of that decade will look back and say that we really helped transform India further on into the next generation.